Hi, welcome to a humble Highland home. I'm Menita and today is tatty planting day. This is where I've been storing the seed potatoes, just in an egg tray in a darkened corner in the windowsill, just waiting for them to chit. Now the potatoes I'm going to be planting today are my main crop potatoes of a variety called Maris Piper. Now I've grown Maris Piper potatoes for quite a number of years now, and I've always had pretty good success. In fact, if you saw one of my earlier videos of how I stored the potatoes over winter time in wood ash, then you'll have seen some of the potatoes that I'd grown and harvested last October. Now potatoes fall into three main categories: first earlies, second earlies and main crop. Now I'd planted some first early tatties a few weeks ago now, and they should be ready round about June time. First earlies, they don't store very well, but it means that you can have a quicker crop because they only take about 10 weeks to grow. So I'd actually planted mine in a bag. So I've got two just compost bags, and I put in a couple of drainage holes in the bottom, put a good layer of compost, and then I think I've got two and a small third seed potato in there. And because we're still getting frosts, I put a layer of straw just round the edge and enough to cover the top at night time, just to keep it cozy. So I've already covered these over once. Normally you would earth them up, what's called earth them up, but as I do no dig, I just put another layer of compost on top. So I've already done that to these once, and I probably will have to do them another couple of times before they're actually ready. So I've got my two bags, and I've also got this a wee bucket that should give me an early crop in June. So you don't need a great deal of land to be able to grow a good crop of tatties. Now second early potatoes take around about 13 weeks to grow, and you would normally be using those for salad potatoes, so you wouldn't need as much space, planting space, in between the seed potatoes as what you would do main crop, because you're not looking for them to get really big. You're just looking for a nice round small potato to have with your salads. So these are my main crop potato. As I said before, these are Maris Piper potatoes, and I've had them chitting for a good few weeks now. Now for those that are not aware, chitting just means encouraging the potatoes to start sprouting before you actually plant them. Now some people do leave them to chit on a windowsill, dark windowsill, before planting. Some people don't. And sometimes some people cut the potato where they've got several seeds sprouting. So I've got one there, I've got one there, I've got one there. So I've got a few. So I could cut that potato in half and have two seed potatoes technically. And what you would normally do is, if you do cut it in half, you leave it in the windowsill for a little while, just so that the wet edges, the centre of it, then it dries over, and that just prevents it from rotting once you do plant it out into the ground. But I'm not going to do that. All I'm going to do is remove some of the little sprouts, like that one, and I'm going to leave the bigger sprouts to do the growing. Now, like I said, these are Maris Piper potatoes, and you can get loads of different varieties of potatoes depending what you want them for, and some can be different shapes, sizes, colours. It just depends what you want. and also what you want to experiment with, because sometimes it's nice to grow something a bit different and to have something a bit different on your plate. So I'm going to get my trowel. Now I'm using a thinner trowel today because I don't want to disturb the ground too much. I might need 2 hands for this one. That's absolutely typical. Just as I'm about to start planting and the rain came on. So I've taken a bit of refuge in the greenhouse, and hopefully it is just a shower and it will pass. Now, just like tomatoes, you can get indeterminate potatoes as well as determinate potatoes. Now, the difference being that determinate potatoes will be shorter, but they'll be more bushier, and you don't need as much depth of soil to be able to grow them as the tubers spread out further. Whereas with indeterminate potatoes, the roots will grow deeper and the foliage will grow higher. So sometimes you have to take that into consideration depending on your own individual circumstances. So if you're in a windy area, then maybe determinate potatoes would be the better choice for you. Oh, that's the rain off. Now I've checked the weather forecast, and for the next week it's going to be very, very changeable, and I think there is quite a lot of rain on the way. So I'm really keen to get these tatties in the ground just now. There we go. This is where the main crop tatties are going to get planted. I have built up this end a little bit extra to the other side because obviously I knew that the tatties were going to be going in here, and given that they're indeterminate ones, then they will bury their tubers a little bit further down than a determinate one. Now I've already marked out approximately where I'm going to be planting the tatties, and I've left a spacing of 15 inches between each plant, but I'm also going to be planting like in a zigzag, so I'll have another plant here, so I've left 12 inches in between that. So technically there will be 2 rows, but they won't be side by side, they'll be more in a zigzag, and then that way they've got a lot more space underneath to grow their tubers, and they're not competing for the nutrients. So I've just used 2 canes to keep me approximately straight, and then I've made a hole there just with my little dibber, and I've just measured around about 12 inches, and then in between we've got 6, 12, maybe a little bit more than 15, so just approximately, and then that leaves a good bit of space in between the plants and then opposite there in the middle, so it forms a bit of a zigzag. Now I'm going to start off my planting round about here. I don't want it too close to the edge because that's where it dries out first. So I'm planting in a bit so that it doesn't dry out. So what I'm going to do is put the depth of my trowel in, just move the earth to one side, and as I bring my trowel out, I'm going to push the seed potato in with the sprouts sticking up the way. Do that again, and push it forward, seed potato in as I bring the trowel out. So I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of these tatties in before the weather decides to change again. And look who's come to join me! I have a wee visitor. I think you should come and help me plant some tatties. So that's the tatties in, and I've covered them over just where the soil had been slightly disturbed. So they're all tucked up now. Now as they start to grow, we're still getting frosts here. So what I will do is I will just place some more compost on top of where the foliage starts coming through the ground. Now last year I'd used straw to cover up the tatties, and this was part of the Ruth Stout method, which I would recommend you go and look up. She really was an absolute pioneer in the world of gardening, and she was a fantastic character. So I would recommend you go and have a look at the Ruth Stout method. Her concept for gardening was work smarter, not harder, which I would be a great fan of. So she would use straw as a mulch to keep the weeds down, but to also just cover the seeds up that she'd planted. So she wouldn't even dig in the tatties like I had, and just disturb the earth just slightly to get the seed potato in there. She would just place the seed potato on the ground and cover it up with some form of mulch. Normally it would be straw. So that's what I did last year. And that was in my other garden, because as I've said before, I haven't actually grown tatties in this garden before, because this is a new kitchen garden. So everything that I do in this garden this year, it is just a complete experiment. But that's part of the fun. That's part of the fun of gardening. Another reason to cover up the potatoes as they start to grow is to make sure that the tubers are always covered over, because if not, they'll start to turn green, and that's just the sunlight getting at the tubers, the potatoes that are growing. And if they turn green, then they can have toxins in them that are harmful to humans. So you're best off discarding any potatoes that start to turn green. So come October time, when hopefully we'll have a really good yield of main crop potatoes, then I will be in a better position to be able to compare the Ruth Stout method that I used in my previous garden last year and the no dig that I'm using this year, and see which method I prefer. There are so many different styles of gardening out there, and I think I do a little bit of everything. I don't have one typical style that I use. I just use what works for me in the place that I'm in at the time and what space that I've got to grow in. So, and I like to try different things. What works one year might not work another year. And it's also, like I've said before in another video, it's got to fit in with your lifestyle as well. So anything that's going to make it a little bit easier has got to be worth a try. So I'm going to start clearing up and putting everything away, because I have dinner on the go. So I think it's time to say goodbye for just now. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I hope it's been of use, and I will see you in the next video.